Well, that was unpleasant. Hi, I'm back. It's me, Chuck the Blue Wizard, and this time we're gonna do a little bit something, I don't know, maybe a little different, but mostly it's in response to some things that I saw while I was traveling through the ether, and I wanted to talk about dwarf wizards. And while I talk about dwarf wizards, I want to paint a Warhammer 40K space dwarf wizard, and that's this dwarf wizard here. It's come to my attention, mine being the person who manages this channel and makes all the content for it, that I've never shown the whole model painting process from start to finish, the way I do it. But mostly, instead of just making this a boring procedural video, I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's dwarves and wizards, and how dwarf wizards are awesome.
From the very start, we have the box here. We open it up, and there's the sprue. If you've never seen one before, this is what they look like. So for preparation, I have my instruction manual close by, and I find the piece that I need, take my sprue cutters out, and try to cut as close to the piece as I can. Then, yes, I use the mold line scraper to get off any of the excess burrs or anything like that that are sticking out, and I use a sanding stick to file down any other sort of jagged edges. Then I always dry fit my models before I glue them together to make sure they fit, and I take the plastic glue and apply it to the part of the model which seems like it makes the most sense. If you look at the instruction manual, it actually tells you where to put the glue. And then once I've put the glue down, I fit them together, and since plastic glue takes a second to cure, I hold them together until they're done. For the drones, it was a little more easy. There were less pieces. I drill out the gun barrels because people will yell at you if you don't. And then I just had to glue down the body to the main gun assembly altogether. Again, the instruction manual will show you where to put the glue on so that you can actually get the best fit. Once those were glued together, all the models were assembled. I used super glue to glue the models to their bases. I use gel super glue. It works pretty well. As you can see here, there's some gaps in the construction of this model, like some pretty obvious ones. I was a little disappointed with how obvious they were, and you could leave those if you want, but I'm going to fill them in. I use something called sprue goo to fill them in, and basically what that is to me it's plastic glue, and I drop some sprues in it and let them dissolve, and it becomes this sort of plastic paste that when it dries, it's the same plastic as the model, and that helps fill in the gaps. Then I took some masking tape and I covered up those clear plastic flight stands that people hate, and that's just so that they don't get any paint on them when I airbrush them later. Then I took some super glue and I attached the model, the drone, to the flight stand, and that was pretty much it. I added some extra masking tape to the bottom and up towards the top just to keep the vast majority of it from being hit by any sort of airbrush primer that I'm going to be spraying on later. And that will keep the model nice and clean. I prime these models with an airbrush, and while I'm doing that, I just want to talk a little bit about dwarf wizards. Now, I'm sort of painting this not in direct response to a video that I watched from Tabletop Tactics.
What about you?
The Grimnyr.
Okay.
The Grimnyr has no place. Someone didn't know their fancy dwarf lore.
Okay.
Dwarves don't do magic. Dwarves don't do magic. They don't do it. They might have runic, infusion. But okay, it's not magic. The Grimnyr doesn't have a place.
Now, I don't necessarily disagree that limiting dwarves as magic in a fantasy setting is a bad idea, but I take offense to the fact that just dwarves don't do magic. Dwarves aren't wizards, and I'm a person who's actually played a dwarf wizard in many a piece of media, whether that be like Baldur's Gate 3 or World of Warcraft or any sort of fantasy video game or even Dungeons and Dragons that allows your dwarves to be wizards. I don't know, I like dwarves and I like wizards, and there's absolutely no reason why a dwarf shouldn't be a wizard, and just saying that dwarves don't do magic kind of limits them as a race. And I mean, they're already limited enough. I mean, most D&D settings, except for the most recent stuff, I mean, they give them shorter move speed. I know they got stubby little legs, but dwarves are natural sprinters, wasted on cross country. I understand there are some fantasy settings that love to take dwarves and make them the non-magical race. Sure, they have a history of using magical objects and making magic objects, but they don't actually cast spells, and that just seems silly. I think that you could definitely say that dwarf wizards are rare, and that most of them don't use magic, but just to say that none use magic is absolutely missing out on an entire possibility when it comes to maybe a subset of dwarves that use magic. For instance, in Dragon Age, that is a setting that is established that dwarves are completely cut off from using magic. However, I believe in the most recent Dragon Age video game, which I have not played, and mostly because I didn't think it looked very good, but one of the dwarf characters there, I think, starts using magic. So that's a cool development. Oh, the species that's supposedly cut off from using magic, now they can use magic? What a conundrum! And when it comes to the Leagues of Votann, which this character is from, by the way, this is the Grimnyr. He's sort of like a dwarf wizard from the Leagues of Votann. They're not even really using magic. They're psychers, using psychic powers, which is the Warhammer 40K equivalent of magic, air quotes. And I think that just saying that dwarves can't be psychers is silly. And for one thing, the Leagues of Votann aren't technically dwarves speaking, they're evolved humans, so the fact that they would be completely cut off from the warp and using psychic powers doesn't make any sense. If they're a warp-capable species, they have to have some sort of magic or psyker ability in order to be able to traverse the warp. Of course, they're super advanced and whatnot, so they may have a way that we don't know about how to use the warp. But again, it's sort of a silly distinction to make, and to say that they just can't be psychers because, oh, dwarves can't be wizards is also very, very silly. It seems like I'm sort of overreacting to that video, and they made a lot of proclamations that I don't agree with. For instance, shortly after they said that dwarves can't be wizards, they also basically... Bard said that he would completely eliminate the entire faction of the Leagues of Votann because he doesn't think they fit into the setting.
Do I think they have any kind of connection to the rest of 40k? Not really. But that's, for me personally, that's my take. I don't think the Imperium of Man and the Guard and the Sisters work in the same universe as the Leagues of Votann.
I mean, if he's got a free pass to add stuff back into the Emperor's Children, I think we can give you a free pass to get rid of the Votann.
So I hate to say it, I would control.
I mean, you are alive. Control delete.
It just shows me that he doesn't really know about the lore behind the Leagues of Votann, which is fine. I mean, but even if you don't know the lore and think they don't fit into the setting, I mean, come on, they're space dwarves. It's awesome, and I think that he just needs to read into them a little bit. And I think he's had one too many bad games against them. I think that they don't even really qualify as psychers that much. They're basically like interpreting the will of the Votann, which is their AI overlords. And yeah, it feels more rune priesty to me. And I admittedly don't know that much about the quote unquote lore of the Leagues of Votann. I just know that the Grimnyr's pretty freaking cool. And they're harnessing abilities from technology, it feels like, more to me, but in a different sort of way. I don't really know exactly how it works, and I don't think Games Workshop has really expanded on too much on how it works, but that gives them plenty of wiggle room to be able to figure it out. So aside from that, this has been basically a pretty basic paint job. Doing some layering here, and I hope you enjoyed watching me do it while I rant on a little bit about why dwarves can definitely be wizards. And I think that it kind of speaks for itself. It also has a very much of a Norse mythology sort of feel to it, because the Grimnyr is sort of based off of Odin. Odin is definitely magical when it comes to the Norse mythology. He's a god of magic, and he often went through the world as a hooded old man with a gray beard. And of course, Odin has one eye. We only see one eye on the Votann Grimnyr, and also on the alternate head sculpt, one eye is covered with like a metal sort of plate, so it still has that. And then also, Odin had 2 crows that would give him the news of the world and whatnot, and basically were his kind of eyes and ears in the mortal realms, called Hugin and Mugen. I probably pronounced that horribly wrong, but they were 2 crows that would always accompany him. And the Grimnyr is accompanied by 2 Corv units. If you don't know, Corv is short, obviously, for Corvidae, which is the scientific name for the family of ravens. And obviously they're making a very overt reference to Odin and Norse mythology, and his name even, Grimnyr, I believe, is a sort of like an AKA for Odin, if I'm not mistaken. Please feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about my Norse mythology. And yeah, it's just a really cool freaking model, and the Leagues of Votann are one of those armies that I've always been sort of curious about, because I really love dwarves and I like the Warhammer 40K setting. So I really wanted a space dwarf faction, and there used to be one called the Squats, which were basically just Imperial Guard but dwarves, as far as I am aware. I don't really know. I didn't play Warhammer 40K back when the Squats were a thing. So yeah, it was a really cool concept to me, dwarves in space. I think that bringing the leagues in there and giving them sort of their own flavor is a really cool and smart move on Games Workshop's part. Now, some people will probably disagree with me, and some people will probably say in the comments even that, oh, Leagues of Votann don't fit into the Warhammer 40k fantasy, they're not grimdark enough, yada yada yada. But I would just suggest maybe look up a little bit about the fact that they're basically a dying species where they are constantly uploading themselves into the cores and basically creating a whole bunch of lag in their ancestral computers, which they use to make all of their decisions. Also, they strip mine entire planets, and they go on Tyranid whaling missions, which is pretty freaking cool. They basically go find Tyranid hive ships and harvest them for biomass, which is sort of shoe on the other foot for the Tyranids. If you know anything about 40k, that makes sense. If you don't know anything about 40k, don't worry about it. It's really cool. Check it out. As for the color scheme with this guy, the reason why I went for blue is because actually Thorin's cloak in The Hobbit, Thorin, one of my favorite dwarves, his cloak when he goes to visit Bilbo is sky blue. I didn't want to do a sky blue, but I still wanted to do a blue. And you know me, I love blue, obviously. I'm the blue wizard. I just wanted to give him a blue cloak. Really appropriate for him. And silver, it was a blue and silver cloak in The Hobbit, and I think silver is a great complementary color, along with the gold that I wanted to use, because I didn't want it to all just be blue and silver, because dwarves love them some gold, right? So for the base here, you can see me, I'm dry brushing it. What I was doing a few seconds ago when you saw me flick the bristles of the brush, that's basically, I'm making sure that the dry brush isn't completely dry. You want it to be just a little damp when you do dry brushing. It seems counterintuitive, I know, but you do want it to be a little damp just so you don't get those chalky outlines when you do your dry brushing. And then after everything's dry brushed, I actually did a wash of brown just because I didn't want it to be so cold in the colors, because he was already gray, or he's already silver and blue. There's enough cold. For the basing, I decided to go with a little bit of a older technique. I used some dirt, some grass from Army Painter, and then I added some rocks from an old GW basing set that I had. You add some PVA glue to the bases, and you just sort of kind of like make sure they're on there, shake them around, shake off the excess, and there you go. And that's our finished Grimnyr model. I think Grimnyr and his 2 Corvidae units came out pretty good. I'm really happy about the way that the basing looks in the finished product. And I think that this model is really cool, and I can't wait to paint more Votann in the future.
So there you have it. I think you turned out all right. And I'm really pleased with the way that the grass and the dirt kind of came together to make this really cool looking base. This might be the beginning of a Leagues of Votann army. I'm not sure. It certainly would be cool if I could afford to do that, but we'll see. If you want to help me afford to do it, then why don't you subscribe to my Patreon? Link is in the description below and right here on your screen in the fancy graphic. A huge thank you to all my patrons, Travis, Rachel, Alec. You guys are fantastic. And thank you for your continued support. And sorry for the long wait in between videos. I was busy traveling through the ether, but mostly I was also on vacation. And yeah, I needed to recover from my vacation after I got home from it. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share this video with your friends. I know that YouTube's algorithm has been going through some changes, so if you aren't subscribed to the channel and you're watching this, subscribe to the channel so you can see other videos in the future. And until then, I will see you next time for some more hobby and gaming goodness. I don't really know how to sign off videos. I just do it. And oh, I've been streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/Felix Sunblade. I need to change that URL to me, Blue Wizard Studio or Video or Blue Wizard Streams or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out in the future. There's other stuff I want to do. I want to try to expand the channel a little bit, maybe do some more shorts again. I haven't been doing them for a while, mostly because I feel like people were just watching the shorts and not watching these videos, and I don't really like making shorts that much. So yeah, that's all I got. I didn't add any super fancy effects at the end here, so I'll just say bye-bye. Thanks for watching.